Thank you for listening to this week's sermon. This is Pastor Jacob. Just to let you know, if you hear a couple of odd breaks throughout the sermon, that they were made by some technical difficulties we were having. Hope you enjoy.
All right, Matthew chapter 6. So I'm going to finish reading we're going to be studying verses 1 through 18. We already read the Lord's Prayer here, so I'm actually going to read up to the Lord's Prayer and then skip and then keep going. So you guys will see. But verse 1, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. For then you will have no reward from your Father who is in heaven. Thus, when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But then you give to the needy. Do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and on the street corners, that they may be seen by others. Truly I say to you that they have received their reward. But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. And when you pray, we're just going to read the whole thing because I like it. And when you pray, do not heap up empty phrases as the Gentiles do, for they think that they will be heard for their many words. Do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. Pray then like this: Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we also have forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For if you forgive others their trespasses, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. But if you do not forgive others their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. And when you fast, do not look gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces, that their fasting may be seen by others. Truly I say to you, they have received their reward. But when you fast, anoint your head and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. One of my interests back in school, I love to, dramatic performances on stage. And so I loved the play. I loved the variety of things. I was able to do it in middle school. Elementary school and middle school and high school and even in college. It was my thing. Go figure. That probably surprises you that I liked to act on stage. But I enjoyed doing it, okay? It was just something I really enjoyed. I didn't like the doing the sets in the back, but I enjoyed being out there and performing a role and getting the audience to draw into the performance. It was great fun, and I had a great drama teacher, etc. But I learned something in my time of acting, that what goes on behind the scenes matters more than what happens up on stage. I got to watch a performance with some of my friends at the high school, and I got to go for they usually perform on Thursday night, Friday night, and Saturday night. Okay, Thursday night's usually sort of that. They do the performance, but it's usually only the parents and dedicated people that come, that one. And then Friday, that's their big show where you get all the kids, all the people, the teens, the high school, that's it. And then Saturday, it's just wild. It's typically how it ended up playing, okay? So Saturday, so it's for everybody who liked it, they came again, or whatever. Well, I got to go on the Friday night. So they're performing this comedy, and the comedy required a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes. Quick scene changes, and also just changing their outfits from one to the next. So they had to move pretty quick. Well, in the process of watching the show, I got to see it on Thursday, or I got to see it for dress rehearsal, and then got to watch it on Friday. I realized that what happened behind the scenes, actually, it didn't get done like it was supposed to. See, someone had left something lying behind the set. So on the scene change where one person leaves this way and has to run behind the set secretly to come out on the other side, there's a large window here, okay? You saw, and I am not joking, this was not supposed to happen. You hear This guy, he takes off, and you can see the window. He's supposed to be ducking under the window. Well, he trips. And all you see is this guy flying through the window and crashing in the back. Well, it required timing. And so at that one moment, something behind the set wasn't right. And it threw off everything that was happening on stage. Because it's really funny when your person trips. And now you don't know what to do because it requires timing. And so everyone just stops. As you hear this guy get up, trip, the crash in the back, and it just goes quiet. And the guy managed to come back on stage like he did, outfit just in shambles, and he goes in like nothing happened. But we all knew something happened, didn't we? Because what happened behind the scenes mattered more than what actually happened up on stage, because we heard everything. Curtain cues, scene changes, all of it depend on what happens in the back. See, Jesus has been building up and talking about the Sermon on the Mount here that we know. In we've been studying Matthew chapter 5, where he has been pretty much explaining. Make sure. Wow. All right, so entrance into the kingdom of heaven demands perfect obedience to the law. But what we found in that study is that what happens physically is important. You're held accountable, but you are also accountable for what happens in your mind. See, what happens behind the scenes in your mind matters. Fine, you haven't killed anyone. Have you ever hated someone? Have you ever called someone a fool? Have you ever thought something in your mind that you shouldn't have thought? You are just as guilty for what goes behind in your mind and behind the scenes as you are out there, because what happens in your mind is going to be produced out. What happens behind the scene matters. And so he's been building this up, and he gets us here to Matthew chapter 6. And he starts discussing, he says, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people in order to be seen by them. And what Jesus begins to teach here is we have to be careful in how we present ourselves. We have to be careful in what we do. Because as it says, beware of practicing. This is when Jesus is saying beware, caution, listen to this, it is important. Because if you are doing your good, you're doing your righteousness before other people to be seen by them, then there are consequences for that. Because yes, you're practicing your righteous, but once again, what goes behind the scenes in your mind matters more than what happens out there on stage. He has been, as you guys know, taking specific stabs at a system that says righteousness depends on what is seen and done, not what is going on in the heart. And that is something that it's not new. It's not something that just happened back then. You guys have encountered it now. What you do out here matters more than what is going on behind the scenes. And Jesus is like, no. What happens behind the scenes in your mind and in your private life matters more than what people see. The Lord's Prayer, as you guys know in Matthew chapter 6, is once again one of these accounts where oftentimes we can take the Lord's Prayer, and this goes for any of these things, and we take it all by itself. But even the Lord's Prayer is fit within this system. Because you guys notice, he talks about, in verse 1, he says, for then you will have your reward from your Father who is in heaven. And then he says, all the way at the end of verse 18, he once again talks about rewards. So this is one giant thought. He's going to be talking about righteous actions. He's talking about them in front of people, and he mentions prayer, service, and fasting. He uses the word reward, either the noun or the verb, 7 times in this passage. And then after verse 18, he shifts and he talks about laying and investing stores up in heaven. But right here's one big idea where Jesus is trying to get them, as they do their right deeds, do not do it for the wrong reasons. It matters. What's going on behind in your mind in the scene, it has an impact. All right, James, the next one. Next one. Thank you. Okay. Point number 1. What we'll see in this verse is your actions are the products of either self-glorification or God glorification. He says, beware of practicing your righteousness before other people, to be seen by them. So the goal of you doing this nice deed was so they looked at you and thought, wow, this person's pretty cool. And he explains this in verse 2. He says, thus when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you, as the hypocrites in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be praised by others. I sort of imagine what this would look like. You know, you have the person who's sitting on the side of the road, and you pull over in your car, and you get, instead of just handing, your money out the window, you stop the car, open the door. Da, 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 da. Traffic is stopped. Hand them your 50 cents. Go back in your car, drive away. Back then, they would make a scene. If they were going to give to a needy person, what they wanted to do is they wanted to make sure that everyone saw them and what they did and how good they were and how generous and loving. Jesus said, beware. You know those like shofar things they have in South Africa? No, that's not shofar. What's that thing called? It's is that what it's called? Not the Australia one. It's the South Africa one. Yeah, the Jewish one's the shofar. See, there's all these cool horns. Yes. I know. It's going to come to me later. But that's what I'm thinking in my mind. Ugh, okay. He says, but when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing. And that's awesome, because if your right hand was giving, your left hand would be like, okay, don't. It's supposed to be in secret. Your motive for helping others is not so other people see you. Because the result is, he says, if that they may be praised by others, truly I say to you that they have received their reward. See, the reward of doing that nice thing, yes, they get recognized and glorified by man, but God says that's all you're getting. First, if you did it in secret, it says at the end of verse 4, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. He starts painting a picture. So in 2 through 4, it's about giving. In 5, verses 5 through 15, he's once again presenting this. He says, and when you pray, you must not pray like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray. He mentions hypocrite in verse 4. He mentions hypocrite in verse 2. He mentions hypocrite a lot. And verse 16. Do not look gloomy like the hypocrites. So he starts painting a picture for us. Is the people who like to be seen for the good they do are hypocrites. And then there's this other group of people who are doing it in secret. So we see hypocrites. We've already talked about that one. We see praying. So when you pray, you must not be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and at the street corners, that they may be seen by others. You imagine somebody standing there and praying on the corner of New York City? I mean, just people are like, wow, he's so godly. And as they're praying, God, blah, blah, blah. See, they have the reward. God sees them. It's like, I hope you like that. It's not worth anything. You got your reward. And then verse 16, when you fast, do not like gloomy like the hypocrites, for they disfigure their faces. You guys You guys have your kids like when they're sick or when they fake sick? Maybe wives, it's when your husbands get sick and they're like, what's going on with you, Jacob? I'm fasting today. Dude, how long has it been? It's been an hour since I ate. So it's just like, I love that description, disfigure your face. Like, I mean, that's your, this is what comes to mind. When I read the Bible, these are the images that come to my mind, okay? All right, it's pretty much me. Disfiguring my face when I haven't eaten for a whole hour, or something. But like, that's what it is. It should draw attention. Man, he must have really fasted for a long time. His face is really disfigured. It says they have received the reward because once again, I'm fasting or acting or whatever it is. Like I'm fasting, so people look at me and they're like, man, he's really godly. Yeah, I am. Oh. Jesus is like, you have your reward for that. See, what he's saying is if your motive for doing good is just so people look at you, that's all the rewards you're getting. That brief glimpse. That's it. Now, one of the things I want to say, so turn to the next slide. So he mentions hypocrite a couple times, and there's sort of like two ways that hypocrites gets thrown around a lot, doesn't it, nowadays? It's like the new thing, okay? Politicians are hypocrites or not, or maybe that's good, who knows? But it gets thrown around. Christians are always hypocrites, etc. And so I wanted to, clarify that when we're using hypocrites here, so we have this first one. It's a person who pretends to have virtues, morals, principles that he or she does not actually possess. How many of you guys have tried to act better than you really were? Okay, so in a way, are we all hypocrites to a point? Yeah, if we take it that way, okay? All right. We're trying to be better. I'm trying to be really disciplined, but I'm not disciplined at all. Okay, technically I'm sort of a hypocrite, okay? And it gets thrown around really easy a lot. But then there's this other idea. A person who feigns some desirable or publicly approved attitude. So it's like, man, so I know First Baptist Church loves generous givers. I don't really know if we do, but let's just say it, okay? We just love it, all right? So there's that little box back there, and I make sure I pull out that 100 and I pop it a few times, stretch it. Maybe I've even pre-marked the fact that I may make sure it's a real 100, pre-mark it, before I slide that in the offering plate, slide that in the box. Because I know the church likes this public. It's like, man, he really cares about people. Yes, I do. That's what it is. And so I'm feigning the fact that I actually don't care whatsoever about those kiddos and poor orphanages, or maybe I bought a whole bunch of boxes and I'm just shoving them full of a whole bunch of candy. I delivered it and make a big scene about it. But really, I don't care about the orphans. I don't care about the kids. I don't care what they're going through. I just want to be seen and recognized by people. That's a hypocrite. That is what Jesus is talking about. People who are feigning and looking like they actually care about what God and God wants and glorifying the Lord. They're making a big scene about it, but at their hearts, they don't care at all. They only want to be recognized by other people. Have you ever worked with someone that just had to be the center of attention? And I'm not talking about just the enthusiastic personality where they can't stop talking because they're just like, oh. Talking about the people who literally have to twist everything to something that has to do with them and how good they are. I've worked with a few of them. You just want to close the door and walk away from them. Everything has to be about them and how rough their life is or how hard home is or how troubling work was. And they literally draw everything to themselves. And God says those people are motivated by themselves, by self-glorification and their own glory and their own reputations. And sadly, that is the limit of their reward. But they have earned nothing with the Father. All right, so God's rewards rest on what is happening behind the scenes. So we have verse 2. He says, thus when you give to the needy, sound no trumpet before you as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and the street. We've read that. So in verse 4, so that your giving may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will reward you. So we have this reward system. We were talking about this a little bit in my community group where this reward. So God seems to reward. Well, Jesus is saying God does offer rewards for what goes on behind the scenes. It's going in the minds and in our motives. And so you have verse 5. I think we read that seen by others. Truly I say to you, they've received the rewards. Verse 6. But when you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. So we have this imagery of praying. You have these two choices. You can go out to the street corners and pray and make a big deal about it, or you can go into a closet, close the door behind you. Can anybody see what's going on in the closet? There's a reason why there's a phrase coming out of the closet. No one knows what's going on in there. It's quiet. It is secret. Hypocrites make noise. The louder, the better. But the louder sounding trumpet, they make it obvious what they are doing. There's you guys are familiar, Luke chapter 18, turn there. It's a few books of the Bible away, Matthew, Mark, Luke, chapter 18, verse 10. Luke 18:10. See, when I think about individuals who go out to the street corners to pray, this is a good image to keep in your mind what Jesus is talking about. Luke 18, verse 10. So Jesus is saying 2 men went up to the temple to pray. One a Pharisee and the other a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, prayed, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, the unjust, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. Imagine how awkward that prayer would be. He's talking about me. I fast twice a week. I give tithes of all that I get. That is the prayer of a hypocrite. Oh, I am so thankful I am not like them because I do all my good deeds, but inside I'm rotten. And then you have the tax collector. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even lift up his eyes to heaven, beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. What is the Pharisees and this tax collector, a servant? See, God is wanting, the Father wants something. There's something absolutely critical to your private spiritual life. All right, let's turn back to Matthew. So Jesus is like, I want you to go into the closet and spend time with the Father who sees and hears you. Don't go out into the streets to be seen and heard by man. And when you fast, see the imagery there, look at verse 17. But when you fast, anoint your head. So that's pretty much take a shower, clean off, and wash your face, that your fasting may not be seen by others, but by your Father who is in secret. I don't want to pass judgment on an entire group of people. So I don't exactly know all of their motives. I don't want to say that, but you guys know of Ash Wednesday, where everybody makes it's to draw attention, in my mind. Not necessarily for all of them, because there's a lot of tradition and there's a lot of stuff that goes behind that, but that's the idea. When you go and when you fast, when you're serving, when you're trying to dedicate time to the Lord to think and to pray, do you make a big deal about it? You want people to see how faithful you are, how you're really struggling for Jesus. See, if you want God to work in your life, then don't showboat your faith. Fight that quiet battle in the privacy of your own home and in your own mind and in your own life. Not saying what happens on the outside isn't important, but what matters more is what's going on behind the scenes. See, the Father who sees in secret will reward you. The Father who sees what is going on will reward you. I will say, honestly, for people, this is completely backwards for us. I mean, it's not natural. Even with people who hate being in front of people and in the limelight, some people are just like the blah people, and then other people are like, yeah, you just do your thing. Okay, but even those people, they like to be recognized for the deeds. It's just a very natural response to be appreciated. Am I right? We like to be appreciated for the good we do, right? Okay, if no one's like, I don't like to be appreciated at all. No, wrong. Okay, we like to be appreciated. We like to have some value shown to us. That is a normal reaction, but what happens is we let that desire to be appreciated and to be valued and to be thought of in a good way, we take that and we let it take over. Where we want it a little bit more. So we think, well, God, He hasn't given me or thanked me enough or appreciated my work enough, so I'm just going to make this a little louder so other people see, so I get something. We take it. That basic human need, and we start to run with it, and we turn it into a, look at me, glorify me, focus on me. We focus on the public recognition and the public fame, but it matters so much more what is going on in secret. And if you are one, so this is for teachers, and this is for pastors, and this is for people, if we are, and I want to say this specifically as a warning to yourself and to mine. If you are in a role where you are teaching and leading, what goes on behind the scene matters even more. It does. Because if you lose what's going on behind the scenes between you and the Father and your relationship, that lack of, that slow corruption will eventually play out in your public life. And so it's a warning. If this is, I'm talking strictly to me too, what matters behind the scenes matters more than what happens right here from the pulpit. What matters behind the scenes in your own life matters more than the Christian service you do for other people. It is important. It's critical. That is where God works. All right, I got a couple other ones that I want to draw out of here. So next point, Carlene. Okay. And this is a reminder. So look at verse 8. Where it says, do not be like them. This is how he's just talking about in prayer. For your Father knows what you need before you ask Him. When you live and your private and your spiritual life becomes a more private thing, as in you're not showboating it out, okay? Something you can do is, how do people know you need something if you don't make a big deal that you need something? I mean, it's a legit question. I'm struggling right now. And there's such comfort in the fact that, yes, God is not ignorant to the challenges that you are going through. He sees. Now, this doesn't mean you never share your struggles, okay? No. If you are going through something right now, that's why community is such an important part of our life as a Christian. We have to be willing to share. But there's a difference between sharing a struggle and advertising your struggle. Sharing the hard, sharing with people who are close and care and value and aren't saying, oh, he's so righteous. Oh, she's so this, oh, that. No, but I'm struggling here. I am weak here. I need your help. We need to do that. So don't take this as don't ever share with anybody your problems. Not it, okay? What this has is in the midst of those moments, as we're quiet and by ourselves and we're fighting this struggle and we're fasting. Fasting, I hate fasting. I will tell you, I don't like to be hungry. I don't. It's something that you've had to learn and etc. But God sees and knows what you're going through privately. He knows the struggle of getting up in the morning and trying to spend some time in prayer. He sees it. He knows you're not a morning person. He doesn't expect you to be a morning person. He sees the struggle there. And we can find confidence in that. That God sees what's going on privately and in secret. He's not ignorant to those challenges. And so as you make this struggle in your personal life, just know that God knows and God sees. And in one way, God is going to reward that effort of trying to be faithful in your personal life, in those personal struggles. God is going to honor that. He's going to reward and work there. And then lastly, I want to make this point. So next point, Carlene, is spend time investing in your private spiritual life. Well, let's look at verse 6 again. When you pray, go into your room and shut the door and pray to your Father who is in secret. And your Father who sees in secret will reward you. Verse 17, he has this explanation. He's talking about being fasting and trying to dedicate a specific time to the Lord and to the Lord's specific working as you fast and as you don't even have to do it necessarily from food, but as you set aside something that you enjoy in order to dedicate that time a little more to spending some time with the Lord. Do you do this? Now, if you are here today and you're like, I try to be a good Christian. I try to show up on Sundays. That's hard, but I try. Okay, I try to serve and I try to stay active in my church and I try to go to a community group and I try to be involved. Great. Hey, awesome. But if you don't have a private spiritual life, I want to give you guys just a couple of small goals that you guys can do and put in your own life, okay? At least 50, this is small, okay, but it's a start. If you could at least 15 minutes of reading the Bible and praying every day. Just start there. So if you don't really have a habit of doing this, I would say try at least 15 minutes of reading and praying. I would set it up. This is how I like to view my conversations and my interactions with the Father. My best conversations happen at a coffee shop. There's just something about sitting in Starbucks drinking way overpriced coffee and talking with somebody. I mean, am I right? Have you guys ever had a conversation around food and coffee and it's just very relaxing? Take your time as the Lord is that. Get your coffee in the morning, drink it, study, read some, make some thoughts. Get comfortable. Treat it like a conversation. I would say have a list of what you are going to pray before you begin. So I know in the community groups, I know you guys, and I know pretty much in every single one of our small groups that we have, you guys share prayer requests with each other. Okay? Write those suckers down in a book, in a notebook, on a 3x5 card, whatever's best for you. Remember them and pray for them. And remember to, as I say, remember to praise the Father during your time of prayer. Remember to repent and ask for help for the struggles you have. Ask for their prayer requests and yield to the Father's work. If you guys notice that, praise starts with a P, repent starts with an R, ask starts with a A, Y starts with, ask, Y, yield starts with a Y. Pray, P-R-A-Y. Get that? Praise, repent, ask, yield. That was genius, I know. Pretty much it was taught to me by my dad back in the day. Probably by his dad, probably a long time ago. But spend time, okay? And then here's the last point. As you spend private life, try not to talk to a bunch of other people about, go back. Try not to talk to other people. Don't talk to other people about, I did my devotions today. I spent time with Jesus. None of their business, okay? It's between you and the Father. So keep it quiet. So turn to the next slide. This is the one I want to use to drive home here, okay? So you have these two guys. Patrick Stewart, Ian McKellen, two of the greatest actors, I think, ever. I mean, they're like in their 70s and 80s, and they are still insane actors. Am I right? I mean, come on. We have like Magneto and Jean-Luc Picard and, oh man, you can just name the movies, okay? And one of the advice that famous actors like this give is they say the reason why actors like this last is they spend time owning and working on their craft away from the limelight in small Broadway shows. They do the time working on their craft privately where not a lot of people see. They're working on it, and then they get these giant box office hits. But they work on stuff behind the scenes. It's the same thing with our spiritual life. If you want to make a greater impact on the outside for people who are in need, spiritually, physically, etc., work on what is going behind the scenes. And God's going to work there. He's going to own your craft, and you're going to be able to go out and bring them more. So I want to say spend time investing in your private spiritual life as you work on fasting and praying and giving to the needy. Do it quietly. All right, next slide. Have you ever heard someone talk about dieting and their goal to lose weight? Have you guys, I'm serious, have we ever heard that? Okay. So when you get on, let's just say Facebook, and you're like, I'm going to lose weight. I need you to help me. And everyone's like, you can do it, rah, rah, rah. And you're like, yeah. And you don't even start. Because you've already gotten your reward. If you're going to diet, shut up about it and go diet. If you're going to work and grow spiritually, don't brag about it. Do it quietly. So life lesson, I just don't want to say, if you're going to brag about your diet, don't do it, okay? Because literally, they've done studies. I'm not exaggerating. They have done studies that people who share with others they're going to lose weight, they are less likely to lose any weight. Because they're depending on the praise of others to get them going. But in the midst of dieting and losing your weight, it's hard at certain points. And I know people here who have struggled and battled through, and they can tell you it has taken years. But they're not, eventually you own it. You're like, I'm going to be healthier. I'm going to work. I'm going to do this. I'm going to work. I don't need you guys. It's the same thing in our spiritual lives. You have to own your faith. It's between you and the Lord. You don't need other people's approval to keep you going. So spend time investing in your private spiritual life, as Jesus says, because what matters in secret, what happens behind the scene, matters more than whatever happens out there on stage and in